Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Story 1. A few years ago, my friend Tez and I decided to set out on the ultimate road trip across the United States. The plan was simple: start in New York, finish in Los Angeles, and take 6 weeks to zigzag across the country without a rigid itinerary. We were two 20-somethings without a penny to our names. To save money, I suggested we sleep in the back of my hatchback. My mom had been a long-haul trucker, so I figured I knew a thing or two about living on the road. We went to Goodwill, bought blankets and sheets, cut some of them up to make curtains, and after a week we had our little system fine-tuned down to the millimeter. We slept wherever it felt safe. Rest areas, free campgrounds, parking lots, even the occasional driveway when a kind stranger offered it to us. And honestly, it was amazing. We met incredibly fun people. We hitchhiked in the back of a pickup truck to a Denny's with some rowdy campers, partied with an older cowboy who taught us how to line dance, and even spent the 4th of July with a family that practically adopted us. Special shout out to the grandma for the weed edibles. Every interaction with strangers had been positive. Until we got to Arizona. We were near Flagstaff when we found a free campground on Google. It was tucked into the woods, pretty far from town, but it was nothing we hadn't done before. When we arrived, there were only a couple of cars and an old RV. As we drove past the RV, the door opened with a creak and a man stepped out. Tez, ever the sociable one, gave him a little wave. The guy just stared. No greeting, no smile, nothing. Just a blank, unsettling expression. Then, without saying a word, he slowly closed the door, never taking his eyes off us. We figured he was just a grump who wanted to be left alone. So we parked further in, near the trees, and started goofing around, taking silly pictures and laughing. Tez spotted a campfire a little further ahead and, in classic Tez fashion, wanted to go make friends. That had been our thing the entire trip. Meet people, share beers, swap stories. There was no reason this night should be any different, right? At the campfire, we ran into two men, the owners of the cars we'd seen. The older one was completely out of it, wandering in circles and rambling about UFOs, though he didn't seem dangerous. The younger one introduced himself as a former park ranger. He was friendly, laid back, and actually a good conversationalist. We spent a while chatting about life, our roots, random things. Then he mentioned the bear. He said he'd seen one earlier, very close to the campground. Tez didn't believe him, so he pulled out his camera and showed her photos. The bear was right there. We both felt a slight unease, because one of us always had to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. The idea of running into a bear in the dark, less than ideal. But the ranger let out a weird little laugh and his energy completely shifted. He looked straight at us and said, "If you get out of the car in the middle of the night, it's not the bear you should be afraid of." I waited for the punchline, that moment when he'd wink, nudge Tez with his shoulder, and say he was joking. It never came. I let out a forced laugh and made a joke about serial killers in the woods. Tez played along, tossed in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre reference, but every time we tried to change the subject, he went back to the same thing. He started talking about people disappearing in the woods, about things that pull people out of their cars. He didn't give the impression he was telling scary stories for fun. It felt like he was warning us. The older guy was still too spaced out to notice, staring fixedly at the sky. But Tez and I were feeling more uncomfortable by the second. Suddenly, the ranger stood up, walked over to his cooler, which was outside the circle of firelight, and that's when I saw it. A tiny red dot in the darkness. It took me a second to realize what it was. A camera. He was taking pictures of us, not with us, not a hey selfie. He was capturing us in silence, like we were some kind of exhibit. He checked the screen, adjusted something, and took another picture, this time with flash. Tez and I just sat there, frozen, staring. He didn't explain anything. Didn't ask permission. He just came back, sat down, and carried on as if nothing had happened. That was it for us. We made up an excuse about needing to get the car ready for sleeping and took off. As we stood up, the UFO guy smiled and wished us good night. The ranger looked at us with a cold, empty expression and said, "Be careful out there. There's more than bears in the woods." Every alarm in my body went off. Tez let out a tense laugh and pulled me toward the car. As soon as we were inside, she locked the doors, breathing hard. Why was he taking pictures of us? I was shaking. I didn't know what to say. So the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "I read that sometimes serial killers warn their victims." She stared at me and hit the locks again, as if that would help. "Do you think he just took victim photos of us?" That's when panic really took over. She flipped on the high beams and I turned them off immediately. For some reason, this was the only night when we hadn't fully set up camp. There was nothing to pack, nothing to take down. I shifted into drive and floored it. As we hit the dirt road, I caught one last glimpse of the ranger in the rearview mirror. He was walking toward our car, and he wasn't smiling anymore. Story 2. Recently, my wife and I were on a road trip heading to the mountains. It was one of those insanely long driving days where the hours blur together and you lose track of time. Near the hotel, we were exhausted, literally and figuratively, running on empty in the tank and in our bodies. We decided to stop for food before the final stretch and found a restaurant in a small town off the highway. Or so we thought. It turned out to be more of a very busy truck stop area than a classic quiet roadside diner. But at that point, hunger was winning. Getting off the highway was a disaster. The traffic layout made absolutely no sense. Imagine a normal exit, but then add extra traffic lights, bizarre merging lanes, and random turns that lead nowhere. I was already wiped out from so many hours behind the wheel, and trying to decode that mess did not help. In the middle of the confusion, I accidentally cut someone off. I heard a long, furious honk behind us, and my wife, always observant, said, "Yeah, you cut that guy off." I felt bad. It was an honest mistake, sure, but apparently he wasn't ready to just let it go. As we drove up the hill toward the restaurant, I saw a huge pickup truck merge onto the road behind us, and there was something about the way it moved that chilled me. I can't quite explain it, but I knew he was following us. Trying not to jump to conclusions, I pulled into the restaurant parking lot and slowly headed toward the back to see if he did the same. And he did. He turned in too, but he seemed to lose sight of us in the crowded lot. I muttered, "He's following us." And my wife, without hesitation, "Yeah, this is uncomfortable. Let's go somewhere else." That was all I needed to hear. We calmly looped around behind the building, giving him a chance to park or just move on. Then as we turned back toward the exit, my stomach twisted into a knot. He was waiting at the entrance, not parked, not looking for a spot, just there watching the lot. Suddenly, his truck lunged forward straight at us. I barely had time to react before he swung his truck across our lane, cutting us off. He was blocking us. He rolled down the window and a rough-looking guy, older tattooed, wearing a torn tank top, leaned out, stretching his arm toward my car like he was about to grab it. And he yelled, "Pull the car over." Yeah, that was not happening. Everything in me screamed, "Do not stop." So I yelled back a clear no, jerked the wheel and floored it, squeezing through the tiniest gap. I hoped that would be the end of it. It wasn't. I flew down the hill toward the main road, but there was a red light and too many cars for us to make a clean escape. Thinking fast, I pulled into a gas station at the bottom of the hill. And of course, he followed me there too. That's where the game ended. I whipped the car around and headed back up the hill, dialing 911 as I drove. The operator, calm and reassuring, listened while I explained that some road rage maniac was following us and trying to corner us. I told her I was ready to drive straight to the nearest police station. But just as I was giving more details, I noticed something. He was gone. I stayed on the line a little longer to be sure, then we took a different road out of town. My wife and I were completely rattled. There was no way we were stopping to eat anymore. We drove straight to the hotel, checking the mirrors constantly. And the strangest part, even after we thought we'd lost him, later that night we saw his truck ahead of us on the road. We turned around, took another route, and didn't stop for anything. And I couldn't shake the feeling that we had just narrowly avoided something much worse than an angry driver. Story 3. When I was a freshman in college, I came up with a brilliant idea and decided to go through with it. Drive down to Mexico with my roommate Ryan and our girlfriends to eat real Mexican food and have a little adventure. This was around 2005, and although places like Juarez had a bad reputation, we'd heard that Progreso was totally safe to visit. So naturally we thought, why not? The four of us piled into my car and made the 3-hour drive from Corpus Christi late on a Sunday night. Looking back, that was probably our first mistake. We were two clean-cut college guys with blonde, blue-eyed girlfriends, which, in hindsight, made us stand out a mile away. When we reached the border, there was a parking lot where you could leave your car and cross on foot. You didn't need a passport, just your driver's license. It seemed simple enough. But when we handed our IDs to the border agent, he gave us that look. You know, the one a father gives you when he knows you're about to do something really stupid, but decides to let you learn the hard way. He sighed and asked what we were planning to do. We told him we just wanted to eat, have a few drinks, and look around a bit. He paused, nodded slowly, and said, "Please be very, very careful." I felt a strange little sting of unease, but I pushed it aside. It's Mexico, I told myself. We're going to be fine. However, the moment we stepped onto the bridge and walked into Progreso, it was like stepping into another world. The streets were dimly lit, some not even paved, with people lingering in the shadows or selling random things on the sidewalks. We hadn't gone even 100 meters when a stranger latched onto us. A guy in his late 30s, stocky, muscular, with a strong Spanish accent but able to muddle through in English. And he was too friendly. The kind of too friendly that immediately puts you on guard. He started talking to us as if we were his long-lost best friends, insisting he knew the best bars, the best restaurants, the best everything. From the very beginning, I didn't like him. Something just didn't add up, but the others didn't seem as worried. So I tried to ignore it. He followed us all the way to a restaurant, talking non-stop, and even sat down with us as if we had invited him. The guy dominated the conversation through the entire meal, pushing harder and harder for us to let him show us around the town. By the time we paid the bill, even Ryan and the girls were uncomfortable. Then, just as he went to the bathroom, the waitress came over. She leaned in, looked at us seriously, and whispered in broken English, "That man, not good man. Very bad. No good." My blood ran cold. We didn't need any more signs. We grabbed our things and hurried toward the door, hoping to slip out before he came back. But as soon as we stepped outside, bam. He was right there waiting for us. His attitude had completely changed. The fake friendliness was gone. He was frowning. He ordered us to follow him to the best bar in the city. We hesitated, but fear can push you into doing stupid things. And somehow we found ourselves walking behind him down the main street. Every few minutes he would cross the street and murmur something to a group of police officers posted on the corner. Except they didn't really look like proper police. They wore baggy clothes, had pistols tucked into their waistbands, and just stood there smoking, watching us. The whole street felt like it was moving in slow motion. People stopped to stare as we passed, as if they knew something was about to happen. Then the guy did something that really finished me off. He pulled out a cigarette, put it in his mouth, and started pretending to smoke. He never lit it. He just kept puffing like it was the most normal thing in the world. That's when I knew we had to leave right then. In my head, I was measuring the distance between us and the border, and the lights of the bridge looked smaller and smaller. We turned down a side street, and at the far end, I saw a van parked alone in an empty lot. The man pointed in that direction and said the bar was just a little further ahead. No, absolutely not. I stopped dead and said, "No, this is it. We're going back." The others looked at me, and I could see the fear in their faces. I turned and started walking. As soon as we did, the man's expression darkened completely. He started shouting at us, demanding that we follow him. We ignored him and picked up the pace. He kept yelling, and we ended up running. We ran all the way back to the border, and just before the bridge, he finally stopped following us. He just melted back into the dark streets, as if he knew he'd missed his chance. Once we were next to the border agents, we didn't look back. That night, as we drove home, we laughed nervously, trying to come down from the adrenaline. But we all knew we had just dodged something really, really bad. Story 4. In the summer of 2006, I had just gotten my driver's license that same year. And believe me, I was making up for lost time. Every chance I had, I'd jump in the car and head out on solo trips to visit friends all over New England and the Mid-Atlantic. I was 20, but I still looked like I was in high school, which had its downsides. At the time, I didn't think much of it. That July, I was heading to southern Pennsylvania to spend a long weekend at a friend's house while her parents were away. We had grand plans, hanging out in the hot tub, drinking, watching Planet Earth while drunk. It had just come out. And maybe some late-night racing through the cornfields. It was shaping up to be the perfect summer getaway. The drive was smooth, the weather was amazing, and my playlist was absolutely on point. As soon as I crossed from New Jersey into Pennsylvania, I decided to stop at one of the first rest areas to get gas and grab some snacks. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it had a gas station and a huge store. In front of it was the on-ramp back onto the highway, and running parallel to that, there was a pretty sketchy-looking dirt road. I didn't pay it much attention at the time. As I was walking toward the store to find snacks, a man approached me. I guessed he was in his late 30s to early 40s. Stocky, somewhat tall, wearing a plain black t-shirt and jeans, with dark brown hair and a goatee. His truck, a black pickup, was parked a few spaces away from mine. Something about him gave me a bad feeling immediately. His stare was too intense, like he was sizing me up, and he stood way too close for my comfort. I usually don't pick up bad vibes from people, but with this guy I went on alert instantly. Then he started talking. First he asked if I was from the area, which made no sense because my car had Connecticut plates. Then he wanted to know where I was headed and, in this really odd way, if I knew anything fun to do because he had time to kill before some plans later. Before I could even process how weird that was, he casually invited me to go play mini-golf or see a movie with him. Who does that? I shook my head, muttered something about not knowing the area, and walked quickly toward the store. That's when he cranked the creepy up a notch. As I turned to go, he suddenly shouted, "You're gorgeous," loud enough to startle an entire family that was walking out of the store. His voice sounded aggressive, too forceful, and a horrible chill ran through me. I didn't look back. I just kept walking and went inside. A few minutes later, I saw him come in, but he wasn't shopping. He was just watching me. That was enough for me. I went straight to the bathroom and stayed there for at least 10 minutes, texting my friend about the weird guy hanging around. When I finally came out, he was gone, and I felt a huge wave of relief. His truck was nowhere to be seen, so I assumed it was all over. I took my time choosing snacks. Let's be honest, road trips demand sour bright crawlers and trail mix, and then went back out to fill up the tank. The relief didn't last long. As I approached the exit that led back onto the highway, I suddenly heard honking. Persistent, loud honking, like someone was absolutely determined to get my attention. I looked over, and there he was, sitting in his truck on that dirt road parallel to the ramp, waving and yelling. My stomach dropped. He had been waiting for me, watching me. That was it. I shot onto the highway. Within seconds, I saw his pickup merging in behind me. With my hands shaking, I called my friend and could barely get the words out. She stayed on the line, trying to calm me down while I flew down I-78, doing everything I could to put distance between us. I don't know how long he followed me, but after a few exits, his truck finally disappeared. My friend and I had already agreed on a plan B. If I saw him again, I wouldn't go straight to her house. I'd drive to the nearest police station instead. Thankfully, I didn't see the pickup again. Even so, I spent the rest of the drive on edge, checking my mirrors constantly, my heart in my throat every time another black pickup appeared. I made it to my friend's house safe and sound, and we had a great weekend. But the whole episode left me shaking. Over the years, I didn't think about it too much. I filed it away as one of those unsettling stories you just archive in the back of your mind. Then, in 2014, I casually told the story to a friend who was a big true crime fan. Her curiosity kicked in, and she started looking up serial killers active in Pennsylvania around that time. The first name that came up, Adam Leroy Lane. And when we opened a picture of him, my blood ran cold. He looked a lot like the man who approached me at the gas station. Similar build, same type of hair, same facial hair. The only difference was that, in my memory, that guy was a bit thinner. I'll never know for sure if it was him, but the overlap in dates and location was chilling. Lane was convicted of murdering several women and was known for choosing victims at random. If it really was him, I might have been facing one of the closest calls of my entire life. Story 5. A couple of summers ago, I took my son on a day trip to celebrate his birthday. We went to a water park, had an amazing time, and after getting a bit lost thanks to Google Maps' incredible navigation skills, we ended up stopping in a small town for dinner. The place was tiny, little more than a few streets, but the food was good, and just as we were about to leave, we saw a county fair across the street. It looked fun, so we thought, why not? The fair was already winding down for the night, but a tractor pull was about to start. Since none of us had ever seen one, it seemed like a good way to end the day. It was exactly the scene you'd imagine. Families, locals, and a handful of drunk people making noise, but nothing that felt unsafe. I wasn't worried. I was with my 16-year-old son and a good friend of mine who's built like a tank. So if anything weird happened, I knew we could handle it. Even so, after a while, we decided to leave before the roads filled up with drunk drivers. We headed back to the restaurant where we'd parked. It was closed by then. Got in the car and started driving home. That's when things got strange. As soon as we pulled out of the parking lot, I noticed another car behind us. Nothing weird at first. It was a small town. Maybe they were headed the same way. But when we turned onto a dark, winding back road that led to the interstate, I realized we were the only two vehicles out there. That's when I started paying real attention. The road was completely deserted. Just trees and hills on both sides. No houses, no streetlights, just us. And that car that seemed a bit too close. I tried to brush it off. Maybe they were out-of-towners like us, taking the same shortcut to the interstate. Even so, the uneasiness grew as I drove. I kept a steady speed, careful because of the darkness and the chance a deer might suddenly dart out. But then I noticed something. This guy wasn't just following us, he was tailgating. I slowed down to see if he would pass us and go on his way. He did the opposite. He got even closer. I could make out that there was only one person in the car, and the windows were so tinted I couldn't see their face. My nerves spiked. I sped up, thinking he might back off if I put some distance between us. Nothing. He stayed right there, matching my speed exactly. At that point, it was clear it wasn't a coincidence. He was messing with us. And it wasn't just annoying anymore. It was real fear. My son was in the back seat on his birthday, and now someone was stalking us down a deserted rural road in the middle of nowhere. I cursed myself for having stopped at the tractor pull. But how could I have predicted this? I just needed to reach the interstate. Maybe on a busy road he'd give up. Deep down, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. We finally merged onto the highway and I prayed he'd drop back. But no. He followed us onto the interstate, still glued to my bumper. First I slowed down, giving him every chance to pass. He didn't. I sped up. So did he. The road was almost empty, which made it worse. I had nowhere to go. My friend in the passenger seat was furious. ready to jump out and fight if it came to that. But I had no intention of stopping, not with my son in the car. All I wanted was to keep moving forward. Then I had an idea. I laid on the horn, long and loud, enough that anyone in the area, if there was anyone, would hear it. As soon as I did, the guy pulled over onto the shoulder and turned his headlights off. My blood ran cold. Who does that? I didn't waste time trying to find out. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, determined to put as much distance between us as possible. After about 15 minutes of silence, I started to relax a little. Maybe he'd given up. Maybe he was just some local idiot trying to scare us for fun. We even started laughing a bit, talking about how surreal the whole thing had been. But just when we thought it was over, a pair of headlights exploded into view right next to us. I almost screamed. The guy had been there the whole time, following us with his lights off so we wouldn't see him. He'd been waiting, lurking in the dark, just to pull that stunt. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. He had been following us for an hour. This wasn't a joke. Up ahead, I spotted the taillights of a semi. I knew what I had to do. I floored it to catch up, thinking that if I could get close to another vehicle, I wouldn't feel so alone in the middle of nowhere. He must have realized my plan, because then he tried something new. He swerved toward my rear quarter panel like he was trying to knock me off the road. My heart pounded as I dodged him by inches. Game over. I pushed the car even harder until I reached the semi, tucking myself right up behind its bumper, close enough that there was no space for him to cut me off. And then something incredible happened. The truck driver must have understood what was going on because, out of nowhere, he swung hard into the left lane, cutting off the guy behind us and then tapping the brakes just enough to slow him down. That was my moment. I slammed the accelerator to the floor, past them both, and put as much distance as I could between us and that psychopath. I didn't ease up until we were almost home. We pulled into a brightly lit gas station, and by some miracle there was a cop there. My friend jumped out immediately and told him everything. The officer called for backup right away to go look for the guy. We didn't go straight home that night. I left my car in a different parking lot just in case. I didn't want to risk him seeing where we lived. For weeks I kept looking over my shoulder, jumping every time I saw a car that even vaguely resembled his. And here's the part that still gives me chills. All of this happened in a town that's home to one of the largest psychiatric hospitals in the Midwest. Every now and then, I checked the news to see if there were any escape reports around that time. I've never found anything, but the thought that it might have been someone from there, that's the kind of idea that keeps you up at night.